You did not mean to eat the whole bag. You had one, then another. Then at some point the bag was empty and you could not quite identify when you had decided that was happening. You were not hungry. You were not even enjoying it that much toward the end. And yet your hand kept moving. You probably have a name for this. No self-control. Weak willpower. Someone who cannot be trusted around snacks. That is not why this is happening. The food in that bag was designed in a laboratory by scientists with advanced degrees in psychophysics, food chemistry, and neuroscience, with one specific goal: to make stopping as neurologically difficult as possible. What felt like a personal failure was the intended outcome of years of research. This is the story of how that happened, who built it, and what it is doing inside your brain every time you reach for one more. In the 1970s, a psychophysicist named Howard Moskowitz was hired by food companies to solve a problem. The problem was not how to make food taste good. Food scientists already knew how to do that. The problem was how to make food taste good in a way that kept people eating past the point where they had any reason to continue. Moskowitz ran thousands of experiments testing different concentrations of sugar, salt, and fat in processed foods. He was looking for something he eventually called the Bliss point, not the sweetest possible drink or the saltiest possible chip. The precise concentration where the brain's pleasure response is maximized, the exact amount where something stops tasting better if you add more, but still triggers a strong enough signal to keep reaching for the next piece, the next handful, the next serving. The Bliss point is not about enjoyment, it is about compulsion. What Moskowitz found changed the food industry permanently. The ideal formulas he developed for soft drinks, sauces, and snack foods were adopted across hundreds of products. The goal was not to make food satisfying. It was to make the gap between one piece and the next feel automatic. To understand why this works, you have to understand what your brain was built for. Your nervous system was shaped over hundreds of thousands of years, in an environment where three things were rare, essential, and worth pursuing at almost any cost. Sugar, which meant fast energy; salt, which meant minerals your body could not produce; and fat, which meant dense calories that could sustain you through periods of scarcity. Your brain did not evolve to encounter these things in unlimited quantities. It evolved to chase them wherever they appeared, consume as much as possible before they disappeared, and feel strong reward for doing so. The craving is not a weakness. It is the survival mechanism of a species that spent most of its existence one bad harvest away from starvation. David Kessler spent years trying to understand what had gone wrong. As a former commissioner of the FDA, he had spent his career studying addiction, behavior, and the biology of compulsion. When he turned his attention to food, what he found was that the industry had effectively reverse-engineered the brain's reward architecture. Salt, sugar, and fat in the right combinations do not just produce pleasure. They trigger dopamine release in the nucleus accumbens, the same circuit that processes alcohol, cocaine, and gambling. The bliss point is not a flavor preference. It is a neurological event. The food is not appealing because it tastes good. It is appealing because it activates the part of your brain designed to say, "This is worth pursuing at almost any cost." But the industry did not stop at the bliss point. Food scientists discovered a phenomenon called sensory-specific satiety. Your brain is wired to tire of a single flavor relatively quickly, a defense mechanism against overconsumption of any one nutrient. The solution the industry developed was to engineer products with constantly shifting, layered flavor profiles that prevent any single sensation from dominating long enough to trigger satisfaction. A plain piece of bread becomes less appealing after a few bites. A Dorito does not, because the flavor keeps changing on your tongue. The signal that would normally say enough never quite arrives. They also discovered something called vanishing caloric density. Certain foods are engineered to dissolve in the mouth within seconds, before the brain can register the caloric content as a physical quantity. When food disappears that quickly, the satiety signal is delayed or absent. The brain logs a sensation but not a meal. Your hand reaches for the next one before the first has been counted. This is not an accident. It is engineering. In 2013, investigative journalist Michael Moss obtained internal documents from some of the largest food companies in the world. What those documents showed was that the executives running these companies were fully aware that their products had been optimized for compulsion. They had internal research confirming that certain formulations were neurologically difficult to stop consuming. Some of those executives, when interviewed, quietly admitted they did not let their own children eat the products they were producing. One senior food industry scientist described the process directly. He said they were not trying to make food that people enjoyed. They were trying to find the foods that people could not stop eating even when they wanted to. Those were different goals, and the industry had become very good at the second one. Your brain was never told any of this. The ancient system that registers salt, sugar, and fat as survival-relevant rewards was calibrated for a world where those things were scarce and fleeting. It has no built-in defense against a laboratory that spent 40 years finding the exact inputs that keep the reward signal cycling without triggering fullness. The hunger is not the problem. The hunger is working exactly as designed, by evolution, and then again by an industry that studied that design very carefully. You were not born with poor self-control around food. You were born with a nervous system that evolution made highly responsive to specific chemical signals, and you were placed in an environment built by people who spent billions of dollars identifying exactly what those signals were and how to replicate them in shelf-stable form at industrial scale. The bag was never designed to last. It was designed to disappear. Every bright package, every first bite that delivers exactly the right combination, every moment where stopping feels harder than continuing. None of that is accidental. You are not undisciplined. You are a nervous system calibrated for scarcity, surrounded by an industry that reverse-engineered your ancient hardware and built a business on the gap between what your brain was built for and the world it now lives in. The hand that kept moving was not weak. It was working exactly as they designed it to. If this changed how you see what is in your pantry, the two things worth knowing are in the description. The research that shaped this video is listed below. And if you want to understand the machinery, not just the symptoms, subscribe. Every video on this channel takes something you experience every day and traces it back to where it was actually built. You did not mean to eat the whole bag. Now you know exactly why that was always going to happen. If this changed how you see it, the two videos before this one complete the picture. The first is called, What If We Are Still Living in the Stone Age? It builds the foundation. Why you are running ancient hardware in a modern world. The second is called, Why You Can't Stop Checking Your Phone. Same circuit, different trap. All three connect. Links are in the description. Subscribe if you want to understand the machinery, not the symptoms. The machinery.